then we will have to admit that the entire Holy Quran is full of abuses. Why did Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad use harsh language? Let us delve into a controversial topic that has long been a point of contention for our opponents, the alleged abusive language used by the promised Messiah, peace be upon him. Our opponents love to quote certain phrases as evidence of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, sinking into personal insults and baseless slander. But are they really understanding the context and purpose behind these words? Let's not forget that the 19th century subcontinent was a hotbed of religious polemics. Christian missionaries, emboldened by the colonial enterprise, launched aggressive conversion campaigns deriding Islam as an outdated relic. Hindu revivalists like the Arya Samaj lashed out, painting Muslims as idolaters and foreign invaders. Amid this crossfire of harsh rhetoric, the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, fearlessly took the field. As the promised Messiah himself explained, and if we include every harsh word and hurtful statement in the concept of abuse merely because of its bitterness, harshness, and causing injury, then we will have to admit that the entire Holy Quran is full of abuses. This links to the Islamic principle of qisas, the notion that under certain circumstances one is permitted to retaliate in a measured manner using the same methods as the attack. It says, remember that the recompense of the injury is an injury the like thereof. Since the opponents chose harsh speech as their weapon against the promised Messiah, he defended himself forcefully. Indeed, the Holy Quran itself employs terms like apes, swine, worst of beasts, and of doubtful birth for those who reject faith. The promised Messiah was simply following this established Quranic tradition of employing harsh metaphors and language condemned spiritual states. Moreover, the ahadith, the recorded statements of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, contain similarly harsh examples. The Prophet, peace be upon him, himself compared corrupt religious scholars to apes and swine and called them the worst of creatures under the canopy of the heavens. This kind of language may seem abusive at first glance, but is nothing but an expression of fact and the best way to describe truth. Furthermore, the promised Messiah himself explains that the use of such strong language was not his initial approach, but a defensive measure in response to the relentless barrage of abuse from his opponents. He says, in the written debates with my opponents, some degree of severity crept into my words. But that severity was not initial. Rather, all these writings were in response to the extremely harsh and slanderous language of my opponents. Moreover, he clarifies, they abused me with every kind of abuse, but I did not respond to them with a reply, and I did not pay attention to their statements and addresses. Their abuse kept increasing, and corruption kept flaring up. Let's not forget that the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, drew a clear distinction between the righteous opponents he considered worthy of honor and the outright wicked ones whose stubbornness and harsh words had to be confronted head-on. The strong words he used were not directed to all non-Ahmadis, but only at those specific opponents who had subjected him to the most foul and obscene language. As he states, what I have written is not regarding the righteous among them, but only regarding the wicked ones. And ultimately, the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, explicitly instructed his followers very strictly not to use harsh language themselves. His forceful language was specific to the immense spiritual burden of his revivalist mission, not a blanket permission for unbridled insults. As the promised Messiah himself states, with solemn certitude, I tell the truth that as far as I know, I have not used a single word that could be called abusive. So, my dear brothers and sisters, let us not be swayed by the baseless allegations of our opponents. The words of the promised Messiah, though undoubtedly blunt and confrontational, were neither frivolous nor legitimizing of unchecked vulgarity. They were calculated strikes by one confidently advancing a contentious theological standpoint under divine guidance.